Hello guys, in this tutorial we will create a free public repository. We're going to go ahead and start with a Bitbucket account. Make sure that the Bitbucket account has the same email that you used here. So if you remember, when we configured our Git for the first time, we used a configuration where we configured the username and the email, and as you can see, the email that I use is info@mytutorialrack.com. so I'm going to go ahead and create my Bitbucket account using this email. So I'm going to go ahead and Google to Bitbucket, and then I'm going to go ahead and click here, and now I'm going to go ahead and get started for free. Email address is info@mytutorialrack.com. Go ahead and hit continue. Now you can provide your full name and whatever the password. Remember the password because you will use this password. And ask me, I'm not a robot, and then go ahead and hit the submit. So now you probably would got an email. Let's go ahead and verify that here. Okay, so we got the email here. And please verify your email address. If you scroll down, this is the button you need to click. So now you have successfully verified, and now you have to give a username. So let's say the username I'm going to give is dkana. Remember the username as well. Okay, it already exists. I'm going to say dkana14. Continue. Okay, so this is my username here. Now once I'm done here, so now you can see it's an empty place. There is no repository. If you go ahead and go to the repository, there's no repository, etc. Nothing is there. This is your account information here, Deepika Khanna. This is the email address that you have used, all that kind of stuff. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a free public repository here. So how to do that? For that, you just go ahead and click on create a repository. And here you name it as the same name as the mygit repo. So I'm going to go ahead and create a public repository here, and just go ahead and say this is a, uncheck this particular box under the advanced setting. You can say my public repository. You can mention whatever you want here, and the language is going to be HTML and CSS, and go ahead and hit the create repository here. So now we have created the repository. Now if you go ahead and look at the source, there is nothing in this repository. The source directory is empty. We have not put any code changes in this repository. And then here you can see branches related to this mygit repo. If there is source, if you want to go ahead and look at a quick overview, this is the place. So this is, we are going to make our public repository here. So now what we can say here, what we did is we can say that we just ran a git init with the bear flag. So it's like an empty repository we have created on the Bitbucket server. Now we are going to go ahead and push. So this is the repository. We are going to go ahead and push the changes and fetch the changes just like we did it in the centralized repository. Now the first thing we're going to do is we need to connect mygit repo to this repository. Because right now mygit repo is connected to the centralized repo that we saw in the previous tutorial. But now the first thing we need to do is, before we push our changes into this repository or into this public repository, we need to make a connection with this repository. So to do that, we will go back to our bash window, and the first thing we're going to do here is we will see what are the connection right now we have. We have the connection with the central repo. So now I'm going to go ahead and remove this connection. So I'm going to say git remote, remove the origin here. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and add this connection. So to do that, this time we're going to go ahead and origin is going to be this URL. So if you go ahead here, you will see this is going to be, if you go ahead and look at your source, so this is going to be the URL. So we go ahead and provide that URL here, Bitbucket dkana14. This is your username, and then replace it with whatever username you given, and then git.get here. Okay, so now what's going to happen is if you go ahead and connect here, now you're connected to origin, but what is the path of this origin? You're going to go ahead and see the path is this mygit repo, which is on the Bitbucket. So now we have made the connection with the public repository. Now we can go ahead and push our changes. So right now, if you go ahead and look at your source, it's empty. There is nothing in here. Now we're going to go ahead and push our changes to this repository. To do that, we'll say git remote, we'll say git push origin master. So now this way we're going to go ahead and push the changes. So it asks you for a username and password. You can provide the username, whatever the username that you're given, and whatever the password that you have set. Just want to make sure I type the right password. Okay, so now it was successfully able to push it. Now if you go back to your Bitbucket and you just go ahead and refresh the page, you will see that all the changes that are there in the mygit repo got pushed into this public repository. So now this public repository has all the updated stuff. It has all the files that we have created, it has all the folders that we have created, and it has all the files under that folder as well. So now this repository will be served as the official copy of our example website. So this is going to be the place which will have the official copy, and now other developers from our local can download from this repository, and they will be able to make the changes and push this changes, etc. Okay, so the other developers will be able to go ahead and get will be able to get these changes into their local file system and make the changes, etc. And we will see how we're going to go ahead and do that. So now, because we have a public and a private repository for each developer, it makes it easy to incorporate the contributions from the third party. So let's say there is an individual who is not on the project, but he is a totally different guy and he wants to make some, he's a master in HTML, etc. And he he realized that we are missing a piece in our website. And that's a third party. He hasn't contributed into the project earlier, so he's not much aware of the project and how it is structured and everything, but he wants to make a change for us. And being a team lead, I really respect anyone who wants to make contributions. So I said, okay, go ahead and make your changes. So the guy name we will go ahead and say is John. And now John thinks that we are missing one file here, which is the pink page is missing. And he said he's going to go ahead and make the change. So now I allowed him, so he went ahead and created a new file. So first of all, we're going to go ahead and introduce this John user. We're going to go ahead and create a repository for him. So now we're going to go ahead and create the repository for John. So first thing we're going to do is we will clone this repository. So we have this one. So if you go ahead and we're going to go ahead and clone the repository here. So this is the username. If you want to do, I think I missed the HTTP. And if you go back here, .git, and the name of the John's repository, I'm going to name it as John's repo. Okay, this is the repository I'm going to go ahead and create for John, and it's just the copy of this public repository. So now we are going to go ahead and we will see there is John's repository got created under the desktop. So if you go ahead and look, I think I did a mistake here. I created under mygit repo. So what I'm going to do is, do not do the same mistake I did. Just go back here. Either you can delete it or either you can just delete from here. So I'm going to go ahead and delete from here, and then I'm going to say cd ... Now I'm going to go ahead and run the same command, and this way, this time it's going to be under the desktop. Okay, so now if you go back here, you will see a John's repo got created, and it's similar to what is in the public repository. So this is what we did. We gave the URL for the public repository and we gave the name of the repository that we want to create. Now because of this git clone command, it copied whatever is in here to this John's repository. Now we have this John's repository next to our mygit repo, and this is John's private repository. So this is going to be the private repository for John, and this particular repository will give an isolated environment to the John, and he will be able to make whatever changes or whatever the pages he wants to add. And then next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and configure him, because we wanted to know that, okay, these are the changes are made by John. Right now, if you go ahead and look at his configuration file, which is under .git folder, and if you go ahead and open it in the notepad, there is no reference of John. I wanted to make sure that his account has been created. So I'm going to go ahead and config right now. If you go ahead and list whatever, so let's go first to John's repository. So I'm going to go to the inside of the John's repository, and now I'm going to go ahead and look at his configuration. So if you look at the configuration, you see the username is mine and the email is mine. I need to go ahead and provide John's detail here. So first thing is I'm going to say git config, set up his name, user.of_name. The name would be John. And the next thing is I'm going to go ahead and set up the email. So it will be user.of_email. You can set whatever email address you want. And it'll be called as john@xyz.com. So now I'm configured John here. I think I misspelled it. So I'm going to go ahead and say git config user.of_email john@xyz.com. So now I'm configured. If you want to double check, you can always go ahead and write down one more time. And now it tells you here, okay, John, and then the email address. So now we have fully configured the John's repository. We have also added the John's repository. We have created the John's repository. We have cloned it exactly what we have in the public repository. So in the next tutorial, John is going to go ahead and make some changes to our website.